Welcome back, everyone, to Grifter or Gifted, the show that asks the tough questions like, is this person changing the world or just lining their pockets? Today, we're going to try to answer that question about Adam Kidan.
Oh, yeah. This should be good.
You guys sent in a ton of stuff about this guy, articles from Florida Bulldog and the Principal Post.
Mhm.
We've even got some court records and a Wikipedia entry.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, it seems like you really want to get the full picture.
Yeah, and I can't wait to dive in.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, so Adam Kidan. Where do we even begin with this guy?
Right. Well, I think it's always helpful to start at the beginning to sort of see how someone arrived at where they are today.
Yeah, like a classic origin story.
Exactly. So, Kidan, he's Brooklyn born and bred, president of the high school social science club, editor of the school paper, even gave the graduation speech years later.
Wow. Sounds like a real go-getter, even back then.
Definitely ambitious.
Okay.
And it doesn't stop there. He goes off to George Washington University for college and then Brooklyn Law School. He even snagged an award for legal writing there.
So the guy's clearly got brains.
No doubt about it.
But then he just ditches the whole lawyer thing.
Yeah, it's almost like he got a taste of success and realized he didn't want to wait around for it. He wanted to make things happen.
Right, and jumps right into the world of business.
Exactly. And not in some stuffy corporate way. He sets up bagel shops in the Hamptons.
Bagel shops.
Bagel shops, dial-a mattress franchises in D.C. He's hustling. Not afraid of taking risks.
He's definitely not playing it safe.
Yeah.
So is this where we start to see the line blur between entrepreneur and maybe something a little shadier?
Well, that's the thing with ambition. Sometimes it can lead you down some interesting paths. And in Kidan's case, that path leads him to Sun Cruise casinos.
Okay, so now things are getting a little more high stakes.
Yeah, definitely Sun Cruise was this fleet of gambling ships.
Like casinos on the water.
Pretty much. And Kidan teams up with Jack Abramoff, this notoriously powerful lobbyist, to buy them.
Okay, so red flag number one,
Mm-hmm.
Jack Abramoff. That name alone screams trouble.
Yeah, not exactly known for playing by the rules. But here's where it gets even more interesting. They didn't exactly buy Sun Cruise with, their own money.
They didn't. How do you buy a fleet of casino ships without money?
Well, let's just say they got creative. We're talking inflated revenue reports, maybe even some phantom assets. They basically convinced lenders that the company was worth way more than it actually was.
So they cooked the books.
You could say that. But hey, it worked. They secured the loans, bought Sun Cruise, and everything is looking up for them, right?
You're about to tell me it wasn't, aren't you?
Well, let's just say there was a bit of a wrinkle in their plan. Enter Gus Booley, the previous owner of Sun Cruise Things. Between him and Kidan went south pretty quickly after the sale.
Like, how south are we talking here?
Well, there are stories of heated arguments, even a physical altercation where Booley's allegedly stabs Kidan with a pen.
A pen. Seriously. That's brutal. So things were definitely tense between these two.
To say the least.
And I'm guessing this tension didn't just magically disappear.
Nope. And that's where our story takes a really dark turn. Shortly after this pen incident, Booley's is murdered in a classic mob-style hit.
Wait, hold on. Are you telling me that the former owner of Sun Cruise is murdered and Adam Kidan is somehow connected to this?
It gets even crazier. It turns out Kidan had actually paid the hitmen hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay, so either this guy has the worst luck in the world or something really fishy is going on here.
Exactly. Now, Kidan claims that the money was for security and catering services, that he had nothing to do with the actual murder.
So he's saying he was afraid of bullies and hired some extra muscle for protection.
That's his story. And he ends up becoming a state witness against the hitmen. The jury believed him, but it's still a pretty wild coincidence, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's a lawyer. He had to know how bad this all looked.
Right. You'd think he'd steer clear of anything that even remotely connected him to a murder.
So how does he explain that away?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? And it's one we're going to have to keep asking ourselves as we dig deeper into Adam Kidan's life.
Okay, so we got this guy, Adam Kidan. He's connected to a murder. He's caught up in some shady financial dealings, and he ends up doing time.
Yeah, not exactly a shining example of a successful entrepreneur, right?
Right. But then, get this, he gets out of prison, and instead of laying low, he just keeps going, bigger and bolder than ever.
It's almost like prison fueled his ambition, like, okay, now I'm really going to show him.
Well, he's definitely showing them something. Multi-million-dollar homes, a private jet. The guy is living the high life.
Living large. And it's not just the lifestyle. He's the CEO of this multi-state staffing company, Empire Workforce Solutions.
Wait, so he's running a legitimate business now. after all that.
Yeah, it seems that way. They provide temporary and permanent staffing solutions for all kinds of industries.
So basically, he's connecting businesses with workers. Sounds pretty straightforward.
It does, doesn't it? But here's the thing. There's this layer of, well, secrecy around his business dealings.
Secrecy. What do you mean?
Well, for starters, the company's ownership structure is kind of a mystery. Delaware records, where the company is registered, they don't list any individuals associated with it.
That's weird, right?
Yeah.
Don't most companies have to disclose who owns them?
You'd think so, but there are ways to, let's say, obscure ownership.
Right.
And it's not just Empire Workforce Solutions either. His other venture, Empire Aviation USA, an aircraft repair company, same story. No clear connection to Kidan on paper.
Okay, so we've got two successful companies generating revenue, but no one knows for sure who's actually behind them. Sounds a little suspicious to me.
Suspicious, maybe strategic, definitely. Remember, this is a guy who owes millions in restitution. Maybe he's learned his lesson about transparency, or maybe he's just gotten better at hiding his tracks.
So are we saying he's a changed man, or is this just a new way to play the game?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what makes Adam Kidan so fascinating. He's this puzzle we keep trying to solve.
Yeah, and just when you think you've got a piece figured out, another one pops up and throws the whole picture into question.
Exactly. And now we're going to add another piece to this puzzle. Politics. This guy who just got out of prison and is supposedly running these successful but shadowy businesses, he decides to become a major Republican donor.
A political player. Seriously. What's he up to now?
Well, it's interesting, right? He's throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars at Donald Trump and his super PACs. He even co-hosted this fancy fundraiser for him.
So is he trying to buy influence?
Could be. I mean, let's be honest, money talks in politics. And maybe he's hoping for a pardon. Remember, Trump pardoned Paul Manafort, who also owed a ton in restitution.
So maybe he's thinking, hey, it worked for Manafort, why not me?
It's a possibility, but it's not just Trump. He's also donated a lot of money to this congressman, Lloyd Smucker from Pennsylvania.
Why Smucker? What's the connection there?
Well, Smucker sits on some pretty important committees. Budget, workforce, taxes, stuff that directly impacts Kidan's businesses.
So maybe it's not just about ideology or getting a pardon. Maybe it's about good old-fashioned self-interest.
You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
It's all starting to make sense now, in a kind of twisted way.
Yeah, the pieces are starting to fit together, but we're not done yet. There's still more to uncover, more layers to peel back.
All right, so we've been through a lot with this guy, Adam Kidan, right? From bagel shops to casino boats, alleged mob hits, prison time, political donations. He's done it all.
Yeah, and somehow he always seems to land on his feet, doesn't he? Living the high life, running multiple businesses. It's like he's got 9 lives.
He really does. So let's dig into these businesses, see what he's actually doing these days. We've got Empire Workforce Solutions, his staffing company.
Right, a multi-state operation, providing temp workers,
Right.
permanent placements, all sorts of stuff.
So he's basically a middleman between companies and workers. Sounds pretty straightforward, right?
On the surface, yeah. But remember, this is Adam Kidan we're talking about. Nothing is ever quite as it seems. And when you start looking closer at Empire Workforce Solutions, well, things get a little murky.
Murky how?
Well, for one thing, the company's ownership structure is, shall we say, opaque. You try to track down who actually owns and controls it, and it's like going down a rabbit hole.
Wait, you mean it's not clear who owns the company?
Exactly. You look at the Delaware records where the company is registered, and there's no clear connection to Kidan or anyone else for that matter.
That's really strange, isn't it? Most companies are pretty upfront about who's in charge.
You'd think so, right? But there are ways to shield ownership. Shell companies, trusts, all sorts of legal maneuvering. And it makes you wonder why someone would go to such lengths to hide their involvement.
Right. Especially when you consider his history. It just adds another layer of suspicion, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just Empire Workforce Solutions. His other venture, Empire Aviation USA, that aircraft repair company, same deal. No clear link to Kidan in the official documents.
So he's got these two companies, both seemingly successful, but his name is nowhere to be found. What's he hiding?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Is he just being a savvy businessman protecting his assets? Or is there something more nefarious going on? Is he trying to shield his income from creditors, maybe even the government?
I mean, we know he still owes millions in restitution.
Well, exactly. So is he really a reformed entrepreneur building legitimate businesses? Or is this just a new, more sophisticated way to operate in the shadows?
It's like we're back to our original question. Grifter or gifted? Maybe it's a bit of both, you know? He's obviously got the brains and the drive to build successful businesses.
Yeah, he's not lacking in ambition or intelligence.
But he also seems to have this knack for bending the rules, for finding loopholes, for operating in this gray area where it's not always clear what's legal and what's not.
It's that constant push and pull, right? The ambition versus the ethics. And that's what makes him such a fascinating figure to study. He challenges our assumptions about success, about redemption, about what it really means to be gifted.
Yeah, and it forces us to ask ourselves some tough questions too, like, can we separate the entrepreneur from the actions? Can we admire the success while still condemning the questionable methods?
And ultimately, where do we draw the line? When does ambition cross over into something darker, something that harms others in the pursuit of personal gain?
It's a lot to think about. But that's what we do here on Grifter or Gifted,
Yeah.
right? We dig deep, we ask the tough questions, and we leave it to you, the listener, to decide it. So what do you think? Is Adam Kidan a visionary entrepreneur who made some bad choices? Or is he a master manipulator who's always one step ahead of the game? Let us know on social media. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh,